Move over. Okay, so it is really, really easy in our gospel, especially in Mark. We talked a little bit about Mark last week, but especially in our gospel today, to get really, really focused on what Jesus does, on his actions, right? And this is important. I want you to notice this because I'm going to parallel it to our own lives, so pay attention. Okay, so we get really, really distracted on Jesus' actions. What are the things that he does, right? So he's going around, he's teaching. We're really, really into his miracles because that's kind of a Markan thing. Mark loves the whole demon thing, and he loves the miracles and all this good stuff. So we get really distracted by all of this. But what I want us to pull out today is this one little line in there that I think is so incredibly important. And that is this. That Jesus is doing all these things. He's been very busy. He probably is pretty tired because, as we all know, when you're running around dealing with demon possessions, it wears a guy out. It's exhausting, emotionally exhausting. And so he gets up and I'm not condoning this, by the way. I just want you to note it. He gets up super, super early. He goes off by himself to pray. And then, and only then, when his disciples go and find him, is he equipped to go on and continue to do the work, all the stuff that we've been paying attention to, all these miracles and all these things that he's doing. Then he's equipped to go do them. Now, I do not condone early mornings. There are people who do, and God bless you, because I'd get so much more done, but I'm not. However, this is incredibly important because we become so distracted by works and things that we need to do or what Jesus is doing, what other people are doing, that we sometimes fail to pay attention to the very things that feed that. We're so distracted by all the stuff that must be done that sometimes we lose focus of why. Yes. Amen. Amen. I know. I wish everybody was that excited about the gospel. What have you. We're Episcopalians. We don't get excited about much. So this is super important because it's this tiny little line in there, and yet I think so much of who we are as people hinges on this. And so much can be learned by this sense that to really do ministry, to really do the stuff that we are called to do, we must take time. We must replenish. Because the reality is, we live in a culture that loves being stressed out. We think true glory is when you're so stressed out that you are a husk of your normal self. You're just a stressed out hot mess. That is the goal. The goal of a good American is to be a stressed out hot mess. Now, personally, I'm a very good American. And I'm also going to give you a nice little side note that clergy most often are preaching to themselves. So, a lot of times when I'm preaching things, you'll probably be like, wow, wouldn't it be great if she actually listened to herself? Look, nobody else listens to me. I don't listen to me either. Okay, but the reality is we become so incredibly focused on all that we must do. We've got things to do. We've got things to do. We've got things to do. That we forget that there's a reason. There's a well that must be fed. There's a reason for which that we do these things. And that's what I want us to remember today, is that we've got to take that time, to take that focus, to stop being so distracted by what we must do that we forget who we are. Because we're so busy doing. Why are we doing this? For whom are we doing this? Right? Am I the only? Do not tell me I'm the only one. Thank God. Okay. It's like, is it just me? God, I hope it's not just me. So what do we do about this? How do we refocus on this? And I know one of our favorite little buzzwords right now in our society is self-care. Especially now that Valentine's Day is coming up and we got like all this chocolate to sell. Or really expensive cars. And you know the marketing ploy, right? You know, it's a hot woman eating a hamburger. Thanks, Hardee's. That makes me want a burger. Who sexualizes meat? Seriously! Another side note. Hardee's. What's that? Anyway, there's a whole marketing ploy that's like, I know that you can't afford this. And I know you probably shouldn't have it because it's going to make you fat. But you deserve this. You deserve this. And the reality is, you're going to consume that, you're going to buy that or whatever, and then it's absolutely true. You're going to have a huge credit card bill that you can't pay off, and you're going to be overweight. And you're like, but, damn, that felt good. Right? Right? So this is a whole marketing play, and we use this concept of self-care, that you deserve this. You need a break, and it's going to make you feel better. That is not what self-care is, by the way. Self-care is not a marketing ploy. It is an incredibly important thing. And so we're going to reclaim the term self-care today because it's super, super important. And because Jesus mandated it, because if Jesus was doing it, don't you think we should too? I mean, besides the whole crucifixion thing. Don't take this too far. But Jesus believes that self-care is absolutely mandatory to do ministry. In many, many places in Scriptures, we see this, that he goes off to pray by himself. He takes time for himself. I'm guessing Jesus was a little bit of an introvert here. Just guessing. Because self-care looks different for everybody. Now, self-care is not self-indulgence. I'm not against eating chocolate-covered strawberries. I think they're delicious. They are not self-care. Well, I mean, the strawberry part is. Maybe it's really dark chocolate because that's antioxidants. I don't know. Self-care is about things that are healthy for you that will equip you to balance out the stressors of psychological, emotional, or physical stress and exhaustion. So usually not a sexy woman eating a hamburger, riding a bull. No, I don't know. Hamburgers are delicious. So, we got to reclaim this because, unfortunately, self-care frequently looks like, eating healthy and exercise. Don't condone those either, or early mornings, but, to each their own. The important thing to know is that self-care is incredibly unique and incredibly individualized for each of us. Because the reality is what feeds me and makes me a healthier person is probably not going to be the same for you. So there's a certain amount of self-awareness and self-knowledge that comes into self-care. There's a lot of selves here today. So the important thing to do is to know yourself well enough to really study yourself, to know what those things are. Again, I'm not saying self-indulgence is a bad thing, but it is not self-care. So is it getting up super early to read the Psalms? Might be. Is it staying up a little bit extra later when the kids finally get to bed and doing some yoga so you can get a good night's sleep? It might be. Because some of the things that will be self-care are things that keep us healthy. So exercise, diet, making sure you get enough sleep. Spending time with your father. Spending time with, and this is a really interesting one, because do you want to know one of the biggest predictors of an early death? Social connection. Isn't that interesting? I mean, we would think it would be like eating lean meat or exercise, but it isn't. Because the reality is, our social relationships are super, super important. We are indeed herd animals. And one of the biggest predictors of early death or untimely death is social relationship. So do you have healthy relationships? Do you have those people that you can turn to? Super, super important. Another big one is spirituality. So one of our predictors of a healthy person is, do they have a connection to a divine figure, something else? So things like yoga, meditation, prayer, spending time in worship, those are all big predictors of health. Those are all self-care. Now, me, personally, I think going to church is a very good one. Good self-care for everyone. Universal. But it is different for everybody, right? So it is that self-knowledge of yourself that is going to help you have the self-care to equip you to do the work that you are called to do. It's so incredibly important to take that time. Because the reality is we all seek peace, right? We all want quiet. We all want peace. We have this idea that peace is the absence of chaos. Peace is not the absence of chaos. That's death. Peace is the realization of an ability to be still or higher purpose in the midst of that chaos. That is peace. And that is what self-care equips us to be able to find. Because in the midst of the chaos, if you don't have that, you will absorb the chaos. You will mirror that chaos, and it will feed and feed and feed and feed. But if you take the time to be quiet, to be still, to know what feeds you, to be fed, you're resilient enough to handle the chaos. So that's what I offer you this week. I beg you, give yourself the permission to take care of yourself, whatever that looks like. It's going to be different for everybody. Give yourself that time to refocus on the why we are called into this chaos. For whom are we called into this chaos? So we're going to do a little lesson right now. It's a word I don't use very often. It starts with N, ends with O. Highly overrated word. But we're going to practice saying it because lots of us aren't very good at it. Can you say it? No. Say it again. Say it a little bit louder. No. No. Reclaim it. It is one of the most important words in your vocabulary. It's the one that will maintain your ability to do self-care. Because we love to say yes. We feel called to say yes to everything. Yes, 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 yes. Because it makes us feel needed, and it makes us feel important, and it makes us feel like we're doing stuff. We're changing the world. Yes, that is why we say the word no. Because sometimes we are not equipped to do all the things that we need to do when we're so completely burnt out. So this week, give yourself a chance to say no. Give yourself some time. I don't care if it's 5 minutes. I don't care if it's 15. I don't care what it is. Give yourself some time to refocus, to recenter, to equip yourself to go out and go into those crowds, to do the ministry that we are called to do. Because, brothers and sisters, if Jesus needs a break, we need a break.